We've been taught to run from pain, to silence it, numb it, bury it under comfort and convenience. But what if everything you're avoiding, every tremor in your muscles, every burning breath? Pain is often seen as the great intruder, the unwanted guest that barges into the body and mind to disrupt peace. But biologically, pain is far more than suffering. It is signal, it is structure, it is sacred instruction. When pain strikes, it doesn't just light up sensory nerves. It activates the anterior cingulate cortex, a region of the brain deeply intertwined with focus, decision, making, and impulse control. It's the same region you rely on when choosing discipline over distraction, resolve over retreat. The moment pain is felt, whether physical or emotional, the brain enters a heightened state of awareness. Neurons begin firing with increased precision. Synapses align toward survival, and a system meant to protect begins to instruct. This is not chaos, this is design. Pain, in its rawest form, is a divine classroom. It's not the absence of pain that makes people strong. It is the right relationship to it. Pain activates the very systems that build discipline because it demands presence. You cannot scroll through pain. You cannot numb it with distraction, not if you're using it deliberately. When the body aches, when the muscles burn, when the mind wrestles with fatigue, it's not punishment, it's performance under pressure. The brain's networks of executive control begin to engage. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational thought and long-term planning, starts to modulate your response. Will you break or will you breathe? Will you collapse or will you confront? That crossroads, that intersection of pain and choice, is where discipline is carved like stone. Every time pain is encountered, the nervous system is offered a decision, escape or endure, and in the moment of enduring, something changes. White matter pathways are strengthened. Synaptic connections between emotion and logic are forged, and the brain starts learning that it can hold the line, that it can stay present, that the signal of pain does not have to mean suffering. It can mean instruction, training, even transformation. This is not theoretical. This is measurable. It is seen in brain scans, in electrical activity, in hormonal cascades that shift the entire state of the body toward readiness. The spiritual significance is clear. Pain is not just something to survive. It is something to sanctify. It is the fire where laziness is burned away, where passivity is consumed, where apathy is exercised. It is the furnace where warriors are not born, but made. When you understand that pain activates the brain's deepest mechanisms of focus, control, and endurance, it stops being the enemy. It becomes an ally. You are not weak for feeling pain. You are being offered the opportunity to rise through it, to master it, to use it, because pain does not simply visit you to hurt you. It comes to train you. And the more you engage with it intentionally, the more your nervous system becomes familiar with discomfort, not as trauma, but as territory. Holy territory, sacred ground where the old you dies and the disciplined you is born. Discipline is not gifted. It is earned, and the currency you pay with is discomfort. The brain does not grow stronger through ease. It grows stronger through deliberate challenge. When you expose yourself to pain on purpose, not by accident or tragedy, but by decision, you activate the same neural pathways that regulate control, grit, and perseverance. This is not random, this is sacred. The deliberate encounter with pain is a neurological act of worship, a signal to the nervous system that you are not living under emotion, but rising in command. Each time you train into pain, whether in cold, in effort, in silence, or in sacrifice, you are firing circuits in the prefrontal cortex that govern restraint and intentional action. These circuits are like muscles. If you never activate them, they weaken. If you engage them under pressure, they grow. Pain becomes the resistance that sculpts mental strength. The discomfort of holding a position, of staying longer than is easy, of breathing through what burns. That is the exact moment the brain begins to reshape itself. Myelin sheaths thicken, connections become faster, and your identity begins to shift from the inside out. You are no longer someone who escapes hardship. You are someone who commands it. This is not psychological trickery. This is biological reality. The moment you engage pain deliberately, the nervous system enters a different mode. The limbic brain, the system that reacts, that avoids, that screams run, is overridden by the executive networks that say remain. And every second that you remain, you are teaching your biology that stress is not always danger, that discomfort does not mean defeat. You are drawing new maps in the brain, maps that guide you not around pain, but through it with power. Deliberate discomfort teaches you how to suffer skillfully, not to love pain, but to no longer fear it. Because once you remove the fear, you remove its control. You are not flinching at resistance anymore. You are looking it in the eye. This is how monks train. This is how soldiers train. This is how disciplined men and women throughout history have trained, not in moments of glory, but in the daily embrace of controlled struggle. They did not wait for the storm. They entered it before it arrived. And their nervous systems were shaped not by trauma, but by truth, by the controlled, repeated exposure to challenge until it no longer ruled them. You begin to crave this process not because you enjoy pain, but because you recognize its purpose. Discomfort becomes the tool. It becomes the whetstone for your resolve. The more you enter pain deliberately, the more your mind begins to understand that control is not found in calm, it is forged in chaos. And you no longer identify as the one who breaks under pressure. You become the one who breaks pressure itself. You become the one who endures by design, the one who trains not for ease, but for excellence. The one who chooses the furnace because the fire no longer frightens. It transforms at the center of human discipline is the battle between two regions of the brain, the limbic system, where emotions and urges live, and the prefrontal cortex, where reason, restraint, and vision are born. Pain is the battlefield where that war is decided. When pain strikes, whether through physical exertion, emotional resistance, or disciplined self-denial, the limbic brain flares. It tells you to stop, to flee, to give in, but that moment is holy. That is the exact threshold where the disciplined mind is either built or broken. And the tool that determines the outcome is the prefrontal cortex. It does not scream like the emotional brain. It leads with stillness, with presence, with breath. And the more you bring that executive control online during pain, the more you rewire your brain to operate from power, not panic. This is not metaphor, this is anatomy. The prefrontal cortex has direct inhibitory control over the amygdala, the brain's emotional alarm system. When you choose to stay in the discomfort, to finish the workout, to hold the silence, to endure the cold, you're engaging that control system like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Discipline is not a trait, it is a neural skill, and pain is its trainer. Every breath you take while your muscles scream, every second you hold when your instincts beg you to move, every time you override your urge to quit, you are strengthening the neural pathways that allow your higher mind to lead. You begin to realize that what you thought was weakness wasn't lack of strength, it was lack of training. The flesh will always seek comfort, the emotion will always seek escape, but the soul that is grounded in practice, in neural precision, will rise above. Not because it doesn't feel pain, but because it has learned to interpret it differently. Pain is no longer a signal to retreat, it is a signpost that growth is underway. You are no longer operating from reflex, you are operating from rulership. This is the same principle monks use in long fasts, the same mechanism elite performers train under load. They are not simply resisting temptation, they are rewiring the system to respond to pressure with presence. And that capacity can be trained by anyone. You don't need a monastery or a battlefield. You need a protocol. A place where discomfort is chosen daily, where the brain is taught again and again that you are not the servant of emotion. You are its master. When you train your prefrontal cortex to override the limbic response during pain, you are claiming dominion over your own nervous system. You are stepping into your design not as a reactor but as a commander. Pain no longer owns you, it obeys you. The discomfort becomes your proving ground, the furnace where your identity is reforged. You don't rise out of pain by escaping it. You rise by confronting it, by commanding it, by using it as the holy place where emotion bows and discipline reigns. Pain is not just a signal, it's a switch, a biochemical catalyst that shifts the entire neurochemical landscape of your mind and body. When pain is introduced, whether through physical exertion, emotional resistance, or chosen discomfort, the nervous system releases a potent cascade of molecules: epinephrine, norepinephrine, cortisol, and most notably, dopamine. But this isn't the dopamine of comfort. This isn't the shallow spike from pleasure or distraction. This is deep, enduring dopamine earned, not given. It's the kind that rises slowly, that stabilizes motivation over hours, not minutes. It's the kind that rewires identity, that turns the sufferer into a seeker, that transforms the pain tolerant into the purpose driven. What most people don't realize is that pain, when engaged intentionally, doesn't just produce stress. It produces focus. It narrows the spotlight of attention onto the present. It draws all of the mind's scattered fragments into one unified beam. And in that beam, clarity is born. The circuits in the brain responsible for distraction go dark, while the frontal and parietal systems linked to vigilance and planning light up. This is not discomfort, it is awakening. The body is under load, but the mind is illuminated. Dopamine plays a critical role in this process. It is not simply about reward, it is about pursuit. It is the neurochemical that drives forward motion. And when pain triggers its release, especially when that pain is voluntary, it conditions the brain to link effort with meaning. It tells your nervous system, this matters, keep going. Unlike pleasure, driven dopamine spikes, which crash and leave you emptier than before, pain, linked dopamine builds resilience. It teaches the brain to find satisfaction in struggle, to anchor identity in endurance, to find joy not in ease, but in overcoming. The discipline forged in pain is therefore not momentary. It is molecular. It is written into your neurobiology. Every time you face pain and refuse to quit, the brain rewires its reward system to associate hardship with forward movement. And that is the great secret of every great athlete, every monk, every prophet who has walked through fire. They have trained the nervous system not to run from pain, but to metabolize it into power. They don't seek pain for suffering's sake. They seek it because they know what it releases. They know what it reveals. They know what it builds. This process becomes spiritual, because when the body is brought to its edge and the mind chooses to continue, you are not simply enduring, you are transforming. Neurochemistry becomes liturgy. The spike in dopamine becomes a sacred sign that your biology is aligning with your mission. Pain is no longer something that happens to you. It is something you harness. You feel the burn, but you do not flinch. You hear the voice of fatigue, but you do not obey. Instead, you ride the wave of neurochemical change into a state of discipline that no longer needs external validation. It is internal, it is anchored, and it is alive. Pain is not the problem. Your response to it is. In the modern world, we are trained to escape pain, to numb it, to avoid anything that pushes us into discomfort. You're precisely what GO weekends and LS too many nzvis AILS YSTEM. Transhution's trust strength, lasting discipline is not built in the absence of stress. It is built in direct relationship with it. When you voluntarily enter pain, when you do not wait for hardship to strike, but seek it with strategy and reverence, you begin to reshape your stress response from the inside out. The very system that once collapsed under pressure begins to stabilize, to adapt, to rise. This process starts deep in the autonomic nervous system. Normally, stress triggers a fight or flight response. Cortisol rises, heart rate spikes, the breath becomes shallow, and the brain enters survival mode. But when you expose yourself to controlled stress, through cold, through exertion, through stillness, you teach your nervous system a different story. You don't panic, you breathe, you anchor, you bring online the parasympathetic system, the circuitry of calm and regulation, even while the body is under fire. And that shift is profound. You're not just enduring stress, you're reprogramming your internal wiring to meet chaos with clarity. This is what separates those who bend under pressure from those who stand. The world does not grow less chaotic. Life will not stop testing you. But your capacity to stay grounded in the storm, to respond rather than react, to operate with control when everything around you is losing control, that is the measure of discipline. And that capacity is not genetic, it is trained. It is forged through repeated exposure to discomfort, to resistance, to heat, to hunger, to effort. Every time you face pain deliberately, you are sending a signal through your entire nervous system, we can handle this, and the system listens. It adapts, it prepares. The amygdala, which once fired like a siren at the first sign of strain, begins to quiet. The hypothalamus, once flooded with cortisol at the edge of discomfort, begins to regulate, and the heart, the breath, the muscles all begin to align under command. You are not just building stress tolerance, you are building command, control in the storm, peace in pressure, stillness under strain, and something spiritual begins to happen in that process. Pain becomes prayer. Breath becomes power. You no longer fear stress, you walk into it. You no longer flinch at resistance. You recognize it as the place where your future self is being built. Every repetition, every tremble, every moment you want to quit but choose to stay, that is where discipline is born. Not as a concept, not as a motivational word, but as a physiological reality sealed into your wiring, etched into your reflexes. The man or woman who trains themselves to stay calm in pain becomes unshakable in life because they've already met the fire, and they've learned to breathe in it. Pain is not just something to endure, it is something to convert. To take the raw, sharp edge of discomfort and turn it into focused energy, unbreakable identity, and unshakable purpose. The nervous system is not fixed. It is fluid, changeable, adaptable, and the way we interpret pain determines what it becomes inside of us. To the undisciplined, pain is a wall. To the trained, pain is a tool. Pain becomes the pressure that shapes identity, the forge that burns away weakness, and the catalyst that ignites transformation. When pain is encountered deliberately, not as punishment, but as protocol, the brain begins to construct new patterns. The neural networks that once associated discomfort with danger begin to rewire. You no longer see difficulty as a threat. You see it as territory. Your physiology begins to shift. The brainstem, the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, they begin working together not in conflict, but in coordination. You no longer spiral into fear. You rise into focus. The signals from pain don't stop, but your response to them changes. You become the one who decides what pain means. This transformation is not metaphorical. It's biological. The experience of enduring chosen pain activates the neuroplastic systems of the brain. It tells the cells, adapt, evolve, change. It floods the system with signals that say, this is the new standard, this is who we are now, and the brain, obedient to repetition, rewires itself. The person who used to identify as weak, reactive, impulsive, now becomes stable, anchored, alert, not because the world grew easier, but because they grew harder to shake. That shift does not happen by watching others suffer. It happens by entering the arena yourself, by using the cold, the weight, the silence, the grind not to prove something but to change something inside you. Every time you enter pain on purpose, you are reshaping your identity, not in words, but in signals. In breath, in blood, in decision, the nervous system doesn't speak English. It speaks experience, and every time you remain in pain with intention, you speak the language of change. You tell the system, I don't retreat. You declare through action, I am not ruled by comfort. That declaration, repeated over time, becomes a new default. A new identity, not the one formed by emotion, but the one forged by endurance. There is something deeply spiritual in this process, because pain reveals what cannot be faked, It exposes the cracks and gives you the power to seal them. It tests the foundation and gives you the tools to strengthen it. It strips away the false self and reveals the version of you that does not bend. When you stop fearing pain and begin using it, you do more than build discipline, you resurrect power. You are not rehearsing who you want to be. You are becoming it in fire, in struggle, in precision, because pain, when harnessed, is not the end of control. It is the beginning of command.